Welcome back to the channel. This is the Earth Science Classroom. This video is part of a series on the Pacific Ring of Fire, looking at the very large tectonic system. And this video is going to focus just on a small area of the Northeast Pacific, which includes the US, Canada, and Mexico, and discusses both the geography and tectonics of this region. This is the Earth Science Classroom. Welcome back to the channel. We're going to focus now on the Northern Pacific Ring of Fire, looking at North America, which includes the USA, Canada, and Mexico. So the Pacific Plate is subducting under the North American Plate along the Aleutian Arc and the Aleutian Trench and causing the megathrust subduction zone, which extends from Kamchatka, Russia, all the way across to Alaska, causing countless large earthquakes and numerous volcanic eruptions. Now, the Pacific Plate is moving at different speeds across this Aleutian Arc. More to the west, it's faster, and as you get closer to Alaska, it gets a little slower. Now, in the southeast part of Alaska, we have this Yucatan block, which is a transition fault section of the Pacific Plate, which is basically in the so-called armpit or wedged in the southeastern part of Alaska, where you have the change from the subduction zone into the Queen Charlotte Fault, which extends from southeastern Alaska, where Canada borders Alaska, and it extends south all the way down to Vancouver Island off the Canadian west coast. Now, in southeastern Alaska, there is a complex transitional phase of the plate boundary of the Ring of Fire from the subduction zone megathrust extending through Alaska and the Aleutian Islands, and it changes over into the Queen Charlotte Fault, which is a transformed plate boundary, a strike-slip fault similar to the San Andreas fault line, and you have the northern part of the Queen Charlotte Fault is the Fairweather Fault, and this Fairweather Fault extends up into southeastern Alaska. It is south of the much larger and curved Denali Fault, and it is bridging the gap over the Yucatan block or microplate and connecting the subduction zone to the transform plate boundary, which extends as the Queen Charlotte Fault. And this area of the Yukon and southeastern Alaska has various blocks of terrain, which means that the Pacific Plate has pushed foreign quantities of rock onto the North American continental plate, creating these slices or these sections of previous oceanic plate that have been transported and moved and dumped onto the continental plate, a bit like an accretionary wedge, but a much larger version, and make up the majority of the south and eastern part of Alaskan geology. Then the Queen Charlotte Fault extends for 700 miles south to the Canadian-US border, where British Columbia borders Washington State, where it turns into a subduction zone and multiple divergent plate boundaries and ridges, the first one being the Explorer Plate and the Explorer Ridge, and it turns into the Cascadia subduction zone off the coast of British Columbia, Washington and Oregon, and Northern California. And off the west coast, we have the Juan de Fuca Plate and the Juan de Fuca Ridge, the Blanco Fracture Zone, the Gorda Ridge, and the Gorda Plate. And then the furthest south portion of this is the Mendocino Fracture Zone, which extends east into California and turns this part of the Pacific Ring of Fire into the transform plate boundary, the San Andreas fault line or San Andreas fault system, which extends about 800 miles through the spine of California along the west coast and down past LA and through the Salton Sea in Southern California and into the Gulf of California between Baja California and the west coast of the Mexican mainland, where at this point the Ring of Fire turns back into the divergent plate boundary in the Gulf of California, extends south as the East Pacific rise, and that would continue south into the Pacific Ocean, whereby the Pacific Plate is being constructed, being formed with the cooling basaltic lava from the rise and forming the new tectonic plate. And this part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, the divergent part, splits where we have the divergence in the Pacific Ocean, and it continues along the coastline of Central America and South America. This is the Earth Science Classroom. Thank you for watching the video. I really appreciate it. And if you get a chance to like and subscribe, that stuff really helps the channel. Thank you so much. And see you again in a future video.